Welcome back to the show. Audience, you guys know how much I love having great book writers and speakers on the show, and today is no different. We've got Kyle McDowell on there with his book "Begin with We," and I'm so excited. I've been looking and researching into him, and literally one of my favorite. It's one of the most excited I've been in a while for a podcast. So, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, Anthony, man, great to see you. It's really good to be here.
When we look at being leaders, we're always trying to find out what's that secret sauce, the secret formula to run your company. What is it that leaders are missing?
Principle-based leadership, man. That's for me, as a veteran of corporate America who spent nearly 30 years leading really massive organizations. So for some context, my last couple of roles, I led north of 30,000 employees. I managed P&Ls that were in the multi-billion-dollar range. And the first 20-ish years of my career, I was no different than most leaders, or probably more appropriately, most bosses. Command and control, results at all costs. Kid has a soccer game this weekend, don't care, we got a report due, let's focus on that. Bang my fist on the desk type guy. And that left me, it left me fulfilled early in my career, but the only thing that matched kind of like the growth and the bigger the scale and the larger my sphere of influence, the only thing that matched that was my level of apathy for the very environments that I was creating. And I had this moment, man, where I just peeked my head out of this corporate malaise and asked myself a series of questions. And the theme of those questions was, is there a better way? Is there a better way? Can you have a similar impact, but find fulfillment and the passion that all of us bring, or have brought at least, into our work lives? I believe we all bring a significant amount of passion and energy and optimism when we first start our career. But in many of our journeys, we lose that, some sooner than others. For me, it took about 20-ish years. And one evening I was about to, it was the night before I was going to meet the top 40 or 50 leaders of the organization that I had signed on to lead. This was back in 2017. And that question of, is there a better way, resulted in me documenting my leadership principles. And I'm not super creative, but after a couple hours work, this is probably at midnight in Lawrence, Kansas, one evening, I'll never forget it, in a not very nice hotel. I had these 10 sentences in front of me. They each began, and still do begin, with the word we. To say that it transformed how I approached my leadership, my company, is an understatement. But what is really, really special about that transformation for me was, in addition to all of our business results, literally with maybe one or two exceptions, every metric improved, including employee engagement, employee satisfaction, including customer satisfaction. But what's more important than that is watching bosses transform into leaders and change their paradigm from, how can I make myself look the best? How can I illuminate myself, put the shine on me, and transition that to those around them, including their peers, those they lead, including the person to whom they report. The transformation was a beautiful thing. And ultimately, it was that same team that really compelled me to write the book, which became a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller right out of the gate. And it's my mission now to speak on the value of these principles and principle-based leadership.
I mean, when you look at leadership, and I've been there myself, and you get to a certain point where that warrior mentality, where you look over and go, look, I've won the war, but you look back and you're like, Jesus, there's a lot of dead bodies back there, right? That type of mentality served me for a bit, right? It definitely gave me something, and I'm going to say you're right in that it was somewhat satisfying to a point, but then it becomes kind of it becomes the top of your hill. You can't go any further. Like that kind of mentality, the burn and churn and grind, you'll get somewhere, right? And I'm not saying it's bad, because I do believe that some part of business is a grind, right? But then there's a point where you get to and you go, it's not very fulfilling for those, and it's not real sustainable long term. You get to a point where you're like, all right, you're one and done. You've burned people out. Yeah. People may or may not have made money with you. But how do you build that long-term fiefdom that says, look, we can still be really, really, really effective.
Yeah.
But now in both the physical and the financial world, because ultimately that's what we want to do business. We want to make some money here, right, but also in people's lives and the community and what we try to build as an organization.
Yeah. Well, so beautifully said, man. And I had an experience very similar to the one you just described. When I started this series of questions of myself, my first inclination was to ask those around me, a couple guys had worked for me and with me for a dozen plus years at that time. I said, let me lean into those guys. Am I the only one that feels kind of so apathetic towards our environment? And what I learned they feared me. People that I thought respected me and we were great colleagues, they feared me, which really compelled me to think so dramatically different. And you said something else, Anthony, that I just can't, I want to react to. Anybody can manage X's and O's, man. Anyone can say, go do this, go do that, check this box, check this. But a leader, as you mentioned, is someone that has a bigger vision, not just for the company, for our strategy, for the organization, but for those around us. As humans, I am so entrenched in the thought that it's our obligation to help others, whatever that might mean. Inside the workplace, for whatever reason, throughout the course of time, that component has left most of our paradigms. Maybe some good reasons, most not. But I have found, and I've seen it in countless, at this point, thousands of others, the transition from this is my job to this is what I am doing to help others around me. And by the way, I don't care if you're a barista, you manage a coffee shop. It doesn't matter to me how quote unquote senior you are or you aren't. If you make that commitment and that choice to invest your time, your energy, your care into the development of those around you, they win, you win, and then collectively we win. And that was the epiphany I had. And it's changed my life forever. By the way, you talked about connection, man. I still have regularly scheduled one-on-ones with a handful of employees with whom I haven't worked in 7, 8, 9 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, look, that's a great part of the human, species, is that we make those connections that you can count on. They become like gravity, right? It's like someone you can trust that says, "Hey, back in the prehistoric days, it might have been hold the spear like this. It might have been, walk like this in the woods." It was an elder that you could touch, someone that you could trust, right? Someone that was ahead of you there was trust, and a lot of that got bred out of our system in corporate America, where we had this, kind of X's and O management, and there wasn't that trust. Like all of a sudden you missed the matrix and you were out of here, right? There wasn't a trust, in that tribal connection. I needed you to survive,
live,
right? The elders needed the young group to come in, or they were going to starve to death, right? And then you got to figure the youngsters needed the elders, or they were going to starve to death, right? Somewhere without each other. There was a trust in the way that we communicated with each other. Yeah. Some of what's happened today is that lack of trust. Someone that can be with and knows, all right, you're going to be there for me, and what you're saying to me is going to I can trust that what Kyle's saying to me, I can bring to the table. And look, I need to hear it, right? I mean, I don't think that anybody is afraid of course correction or adjustments or even some great mentoring, as long as they can trust it.
Yeah. So, but how's trust established, right? That's the age-old question. Trust,
that's right.
It doesn't come when I say one thing and do another, when my actions and my behaviors don't align. Clearly, it doesn't. So I boil it down very simply. I say authenticity plus relatability equals trust.
Oh, nice.
If I'm authentic, and that means, if I'm having a bad day, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to be a jerk about it, but I'm going to be my true self. You're going to see and understand what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, where my head is. That's the authenticity. Relatability comes when we're facing a gnarly problem. Let's say there's a market headwind or a new entrant in terms of a competitor. Maybe we're short. A member of the team is out for whatever the reason. The tendency oftentimes is for the boss or the leader to walk in and say, well, we're still going to power through this. We got to get this done. And not acknowledging that gnarly problem. So the relatability comes in when I say, I'm like you, man, I got a sick kid at home, or I've got an elderly parent who's not doing well. And by the way, this gnarly problem we're talking about, man, I get it. It's real. It's when we act like it's not real. The team's like, is this guy so disconnected? And trust will never follow. So if I can be authentic and be relatable, doesn't mean I share every personal detail of my life, but we have this common bond. We both want to do big things. We both want to achieve things. We want to have success. We want to make some money, as you say. But if I behave differently than that, then I've become that corporate robot that no one's going to trust me. And of course, no one will follow at that point.
Well, but sometimes I feel like it even gets the other way, right? There are times when, as a leader, I've got to go back to the military. There's times when, as a military guy, I had to tell someone they have to go over that wall and they're probably going to get shot. Look, or we're all going to survive, right? Sometimes in business, there are times when I have to be pointed and say, no, look, we've got to get this done, right? It's going to be hard. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves or a person down. We might have to put a couple extra hours in to knock this out because
Yep.
look, but you can trust that. Look, because I'm there with you. I'm in the
That's
trenches.
the key, my man.
I'm right there with you
Yeah.
I'm not pointing at you saying you got to get that done. We got to get this done. But there's something even in the hardest of work I've had to do in 28 years of owning this company. When I roll up my sleeves next to them and with the team, there's some trustable component to that makes it okay to even say the hard things that need to get said on some, just like in business, there's times when I have got to say some hard things.
Absolutely. But that's like that, but that's no different than any other relationship in your life, right? We've got to say things that may at times rub the other person the wrong way. But when we're not genuine about that and we're inauthentic and we kind of paint it in a way or a light that it's not, the other side is not going to follow. That's not going to inspire somebody. So sometimes I get a little side eye when I travel down this path because people are like, no, you got to be direct. I'm one of the more direct people I know, and I'm told that often. Sometimes my delivery is not perfect, but no one is ever left wondering, where's this coming from? What's the ulterior motive here? No one's ever left with that, and I just think that's an obligation of an impactful leader.
I mean, look, there's trust in that. Look, when I show up good, bad, and ugly, and I don't mean bring your disaster to the workplace, but there are days when I'm not perfect, right? Yep. And I can own up to that. Like, hey, today I'm just off, and I just want to tell you guys I'm off. And look, I can't tell you how many times in a work day I'm like, look, I'm exhausted. I need to take a break from this. I want to walk away. Maybe go here. I've told I'm going to go take a nap. Look, I literally need to walk away from my office, and my office will be like, perfect. That's a great place for you to be. We got you, right? And I feel like this is
straight, Anthony. You're human.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's right.
And I've seen it, man. I've worked for 3 Fortune 10 firms. As I mentioned, been around and led thousands of people. And there is this almost expectation that you lose that humanity. You're not allowed to say, dude, I'm stressed too. You're not allowed to say, I'm nervous about this or that, or boy, this is going to get ugly. And that's nonsense. The humanity is what makes us connect to one another, inspires the trust and motivates. When I know that you're in for the right reasons, and I love what you said, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and be right next to you. There's no leadership gap. I'm going to do exactly what I ask of you, and you can count on me for that. And I'm going to behave exactly the way I expect you to behave. And out of that comes relationships that are stronger than any KPI or any market situation that we're facing. That's a real team.
I mean, Kyle, I kind of feel like sometimes authenticity is almost like a smell, right? Right. It's almost like a fart when I'm if I'm BSing you, it stinks, and you might be in the room looking at someone going, yeah, but I can smell it, right? I can smell your inauthenticity about it. It's like right? It's almost like at a cellular level, I don't know, prehistoric level. Maybe we've been trained at that, right? I don't know where that comes from, but
it's gotten worse with time. What do you think? I think it's gotten worse.
Well, I mean, a lot of us are disconnected from it, right? I mean, especially with and I think that's one of the gifts of great leaders that do work on themselves, that get themselves back to center, to be able to be present and have a great presence with people. A lot of leaders are drinking too much, not sleeping enough, taking medications to go to work all day. And, they show up in the office place and they're just not intuitive, right? That intuitive ability to be present, right? And then, by the way, so is their workforce, the people they're working with, right? They have that in there, but that's an underlying behavioral stuff. I think that great leaders, as they start to function up, right, we really start to work on the vehicle, the person, the presence, right? When I was younger, look, I drank like a fish and I partied like a rock star. I loved that stuff. But to get to where the company is going now, that Anthony can't do that, right? Yeah. I can't be the old Anthony that I was today to be the guy that I want to be. I have to tune this body in to show up here in this office, wealth, on a great way of eating, a great way of living.
Yep.
Right? This vehicle has to be tuned in to perform well, to have those microsensitivities to the people that work for me. I can't just walk in and just be unconscious about the actions I have. So I think that's a long, path we can go down about, health and well-being of a great leader, that brings some great intuitiveness to your being, to be able to be present with people, to be, aware of what's going on with them. And then, I think we're also plagued with every single person I work with today, right next to them is a cell phone, right? They're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the stuff that, if I would have gave that to my great grandmother or great grandfather, 50 years ago, it would have blown his flipping mind. If I walked on the job site and he was a construction guy. If I walked on the job site and handed him a cell phone, it would have been something of the gods, right? It would have just, and today, every single one of us is, on that computer trying to interact with each other, and we have that disconnection. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit of that disconnect and intuitiveness together. And I think, great leaders help their people try to get present and support them in the uncomfortableness of being human through that experience. That part where we work with each other going, hey, it's okay. I felt awkward too. And you can go, hey, we're going to do some things together that are going to be difficult. And I'm right there with you as we walk through the uncomfortable or unaware, or, every time we give someone a promotion here, they go through something that's really, really tough. Because, to take that next step, you have to feel stupid for a second, right? And you do.
That's right.
But I don't think we talk about that. I think we talk about a lot of America shows up like you got to look like what you're doing. I'm like, listen, you're going to do this role and you're going to have no idea what you're doing, and that's okay. And we're going to work together to do that.
Yep. Hey, you said something that I struggle to find a real solid answer that I'm comfortable with, and I don't want to assume. So tell me if I'm wrong here.
Sure.
Everything you just walked through about being present and purposeful about, and mainly around self-reflection, which a great mentor of mine, it's one of his 4 principles. Self-reflection is so incredibly important in being an impactful leader. But I admit, if someone handed me my book in my 20s, I wouldn't have read it, and I wouldn't have lived it, and I would have been worse off for it. And the way you just described your journey when you were in your 20s, it's a party, and we all did. I did as well. The challenge, and there's a better quote. I'm gonna paraphrase and probably butcher it, but there's a quote that says something like "Experience is wasted on the old." Right. So I think the challenge for guys like you and I, who seem very aligned on a lot of this stuff, is the challenge is how do we get those that haven't lived it yet to believe it in a way that drives their behavior? That's the challenge.
I mean, I've got this great dog, right? She's a Labradoodle, and when she walks, her name's Gucci. When Gucci walks in a room, like literally she runs around, she's just like a hyper little nut job. And she runs around, she's got to get pets from everybody. And I feel like that's how I was in my 20s, right? I was like this young energy ball that just ran around, and it wasn't guided very well. Right now, there were some guys that helped guide me. There were some times in my early years where I had some mentors that could say to me, hey, look, before that mouth of yours starts moving, maybe just listen first. Mm-hmm. Right. And there are some gifts when we create relationships with those young people who are going through, if we have grace for them, right. I look at them and go, yes. A lot of times I hear people say those young people, they're shot, right. The world's they're different today. And I'm like, no, man, look, they're magical. I mean, they're facing so much data input compared to even when we were kids. It's ramping up. And today, when I can look at them with grace and say, all right, I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to look at you and look for your majesty, and I can support you from there, kind of go to where they're at and help guide them out of that. Go, look, there's a couple things that worked for me, and not from waving my finger at them, but more right. Like a one of being, being there with them. Yeah. And I think that we relate to them more from and see their genius and their wisdom, as opposed to kind of talking at them. And first of all, I think that's all my fear. Right when I talk at them, it's really I judge them because it's what I'm afraid of. Right? I mean, maybe they're smarter than I am, or maybe they're. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe, there's a lot of stuff that happens when I go in the judgment. But the gift of is how do I be with them and support them, because they don't have the experience that you and I do, right? They haven't gone through the battle, but imagine that they're perfectly trained and they have the skill set inside of them. Now I have to get them there, and there was a
leadership.
Yeah, there was a course I took. Now, I'm not going to hear. I say the word Scientology, so don't get scared about it. But there was a guy I took an L. Ron Hubbard class for
Dianetics.
Huh?
Dianetics.
Dianetics. Yeah, a great book,
Yeah.
right? And one of my favorite parts about L. Ron Hubbard was he was a great teacher of people, right? And I forget the religious part of it and all that stuff. But the way this communication course I took with him was, or not with him, but with their group, was phenomenal.
Really?
And I think it's something that we're missing in a lot of our society, in that when we have these young people show up in our lives, we walk in a room and we start giving instructions. We need you to do this and you do that. And they look at you and go, and they walk out and they're like, what does that mean?
Just another old guy preaching to me.
What's that?
Just another old guy preaching to me.
Yeah.
That would be my reaction in those days. Yeah.
I just did it. I just did it with somebody that I'm working with. That I said, hey, I need you to help me hire people, right? And they're like, I haven't ever done that before. But here, go figure it out. I literally just did that, and they're frustrated, like, oh my God, I can't figure it out. And I realized I did what it happened to me all the time. Is that you don't want to look stupid, so you want to go take it on. But the thing that L. Ron Hubbard did such a great job of is small little lifts. Right? His communication course I took, which was this amazing communication. It was really about how to communicate effectively in any place you wanted to go. Right? It started with, the course literally started with sitting in a chair.
Okay.
Right? And like just be present in a chair. And then the next one was sitting in a chair, knee to knee with somebody. And then it went from there to saying, starting a sentence. I would say something like, here, you finish a sentence with me. The ball is
in my court.
The house is
home.
Right. A fish is
underwater.
Right here. So just starting a sentence and sending it over to you and creating it. Now, I want you to start it and send it back to me, and I'll try to keep it going back to you. Right now, so you start it.
This conversation is
interesting. What do you think of it?
I'm going to go with interesting.
Right. So here. So the next part of the course, the next step was to start a conversation, send it over, and then continue it. Okay. Right. So you get the little breakdowns in how to start. The whole idea was getting great communication is when I take an idea from me, right, and I time, distance, and travel over to somebody else and recreate the exact same image I have over in their brain, right? Mm-hmm. And it starts with those simple steps, and the course gets really, really fun. And at the end, it's got this one. It's called bull baiting, right? It's like an old Spanish training where they took bulls, they would tie it to a tree, set the dogs off on it, and they're like, and the bull would, go nuts, and they would keep doing this until the bull would stop reacting, and then the bull was able to go in the field and not trample the owner, right? It was like an old Spanish training.
Okay.
Right. So the course has you in a conversation with somebody. While you're talking to them, people are literally saying things at you, and you're able to stay so present in the space after the training, right? So those small lifts get you to there. Now,
so true. And that reminds me, this comes across a bit counterintuitive at times. I'm convinced the more we can disassociate or disconnect ourselves from our title and what we do for a living, the more impactful we can be, because the bias naturally starts to subside and we see problems for what they are, as opportunities. Not only do we see them as opportunities, we see them with less emotional connection, which lowers the noise in the brain and allows us to focus on the actual problem at hand. And the only reason I'm so committed to this kind of thought or paradigm is when I left corporate America in 2019, it was not under the terms that I had hoped to step away to write my book. It didn't end in a way that I was particularly pleased with. And it taught me so many things, but the first handful of months, maybe even a year, I was still so connected to my phone, waiting for an email that wasn't going to come or some message that wasn't going to come. It was my period of detox. And it was through that process that I realized, yeah, man, I'm this corporate dude. I got these, start shirts and shiny shoes. I got a couple of corner offices around the country, and lots of people can call me their boss. But that's not who I am, because that becomes self-fulfilling. And then you're leading in a way that is very different than the person you were when you first took that role or started on your journey as a leader. So I really believe in being completely wide open about I want to be the same person inside of work and outside of work. Clearly there are some things that shouldn't overlap. However, when I see myself behaving in a meeting in the workplace, if I'm my higher self looking down, I would like to think that's a very, very similar guy that you would see in conversation right now. Because again, that authenticity matters a lot to me. Otherwise, I feel like a hypocrite.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That like it needs to perpetuate your whole being, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. A great thought on that. Like that. So let's just jump into the 10 W's.
Yeah, man. So these are the principles that are kind of the foundation of the book. Begin with we, and I will say before I dive into them, there are kind of two caveats. The first is most people are going to hear this or watch this and say, "Oh, of course, I already do that. These are so simple." Simple is not easy. Simple is easy when things are going well, but when adversity hits, simple's not easy. So that's one. And number two is, and this is such a beautiful unintended byproduct that I've picked up on since the book was released. The impact, if you allow them and you choose them, these principles can have on your personal life. And I've been reminded of that over and over again by a variety of different profiles of people. One individual telling me it's changed how he's raising his children, which I have chills when I say that almost every time. So the principles are, and they build upon one another. And I'll just do the Reader's Digest fly through. So the first and most important of the 10 we's is we. Number one, it's we do the right thing, period, always, period. Never leave that second one word sentence out, always. It's not a light switch. We can't pick and choose when we're going to do the right thing. We're going to do it when it's rough. We're going to do it when things are going really well. So we're going to do the right thing. As a leader of an organization, a team, within a team, whatever the case may be, the best way to do the right thing or exhibit you're committed to the right thing is number two. We lead by example. The question is not, should I lead by example? You already are. Is it an example that I would be proud to see replicated? That is the question to ask ourselves. So when we make that decision to lead by an example, by the way, it doesn't mean life and death scenarios. It doesn't always have to be big, huge strategic decisions. As I walk through the hallway and I have an employee or a coworker, or a friend or a colleague walking my way, is my face buried in my phone? Or do I say, "Hey, Anthony, good to see you. How's everything? Good morning." Because if my face is in my phone, the example I've said is, I'm too important for you, and your issues and even saying hello aren't important enough to me, and that gets perpetuated throughout the rest of the organization, whether you want to or not. Yeah. To make sure the example that I said is one worth replicating, I got to make good on my promises. So number three is we say what we're going to do, and then we do it. We've all been disappointed by ancillary groups or other functional areas inside of the organization that committed to do something, but didn't do it, put me in a bad spot, put our customer in a bad spot. If we're going to be excellent, we have to be excellent behind the scenes first. We have to be excellent behind the scenes first before we even try to deliver excellence to our customers. And to do that, we have to treat each other with respect and hit our commitments. Most importantly, the leader to the team. If a team member does not hit an expectation or deliver on a commitment, they can get fired. When the boss doesn't, there's usually just resentment. There's no real formal mechanism to say, "Hey, boss, you committed to this and you didn't do it." That's when trust is eroded as well. Doing what I say I'm going to do requires that I live number four. We take action. Every company has these gnarly problems in the corner that everybody's looking away from. They all know it's there. Sometimes there's very little incentive to approach that problem. So we just kind of go about our day and we know it's over there, but let's focus on this. We'll get to that eventually. Not in a culture of excellence. In a culture of excellence, it's like the TSA says. If we see something, they say something. In our world, if we see something, we do something. And that could be as little as just bringing up the issue, just to say, "Hey, boss, I want you to know this problem's over here and we could be better off, or our customers could be better off if we subscribe to we take action. Let's do something about it." I may not have the bandwidth, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to surface it. When we take action, we got to be ready for our teams to stumble. They're going to make mistakes. Number five is we own our mistakes. You and I have chatted about it here briefly, and we learn from these things. When we're self-reflective enough to say, "I made that decision, it didn't work out. Well, I have one data point now to say there's another direction I probably should pursue." But when we hide behind them and don't discuss our mistakes, we're facing mediocrity at best. When we own our mistakes, the team will only do that. Anyone. No one's going to raise their hand and say, "I made a mistake," if they feel it's going to be met with retribution or some type of adverse reaction. We have to pick each other up. We pick each other up. is we number 6. I pick you up when you're down. And also as your leader, if you aspire to do something else, maybe you want my job, maybe you want to leave this company, you want to go into a completely different field, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. And that is usually returned in the form of loyalty while I have you on this team. But to acknowledge that, or to think that someone or everyone on your team is going to be there forever because it's what you've done forever, is just naive. Help them on their journey. We talked about that as well. So when we pick each other up, we put everyone else in a position to say, he cares, she cares. We want this collective success. Now is where the 10 we's become a little less kumbaya and a little more tougher, frankly, for some folks to grasp. We number 7 is we measure ourselves by outcomes, not activities. And a lot of organizations, and I was guilty of this as well, we reward busy people. Busyness doesn't impress me. 13 meetings, being double and triple booked throughout the day does not impress me. Show me your outcomes. What did you do? What did you set out to do? What did you commit to deliver? And did you, yes or no? I'm really happy my Uber driver puts gas in the car before they pick me up, but I didn't pay for that. I'm paying to get from point A to point B. I'm not saying activity is unimportant, but I'm saying the real world judges us by outcomes. And the more we focus on the outcomes instead of meetings that have no real definitive progress, or they're just a status readout, however we're spending our time, if it doesn't contribute to the outcomes for which we are kind of chasing, why are we doing it? It should be scrutinized. Outcomes over activity leads me to we number 8. The most difficult for folks to get behind, particularly those in a position of authority, but also the most impactful in my mind. It's we number 8 is we challenge each other. That comes from peer to peer. That comes from team member to leader to more senior leader. It comes in every direction. Typically in our lives in the corporate world, it usually goes one direction, and that is not the most productive way to get the best answers on the table. We have to challenge each other. The problem lies when folks subscribe to we number 8, we challenge each other, and they don't subscribe to we number 9. We embrace challenge. Those challenges come from every direction inside the organization, but now they also come from external forces. And like we talked about earlier, for me to act like they're not there is only going to create a gap between my team and I, and they're going to think this guy's not really, doesn't get it. I can't relate to him. No trust. But when we say, man, this problem's out there and we're galvanized by it, and I'm not 100% sure we're going to overcome it, but we will not lose because of a lack of effort and a lack of alignment and a lack of us doing this together. And then we'll learn. We'll either win or we'll learn, and we'll have a different approach the next go round. The final we, I was purposeful to leave it as we number 10 because I feel like it's a recipe for disappointment if it's any earlier in the list, and that's we obsess over details. Man, you know this probably better than anyone that I've ever done a podcast with. The difference between good and great and excellent and world class is usually very, very small. It's a detail that one company or one leader said, this is something on which I think we should focus because it's a differentiator. I mean, look at this. Like, my favorite example actually is a product from Apple. Love Apple, dislike Apple, whatever. Their packaging is sexy. That's a green little sticker, right? You know exactly which direction to pull. The box fits so snug. It's like airtight. It sends a message that what's inside this product is magical. Now, if you juxtapose that with IKEA or a product from Amazon that may have not even come with an instruction manual, and if it did, it's full of errors, does that evoke a sense of confidence that says, I want to be a repeat customer of this place because they didn't even take the time to write the instructions in a way that I can understand, if they included them at all? It's those details that might seem kind of unimportant or trivial that send a message to our team and those that we serve externally that we care about their experience and we want them to see our obsession of detail. Customers feel that. So those 10 principles are what I created in Lawrence, Kansas in 2017, changed a massive portfolio of business, which helped me or compelled me to write the book. And since then, we've sold nearly 30,000 copies of the book, and teams around the country are embracing them, got posters up, and it's been the most fun that I think I've ever had in my career. But most importantly, I think it's having an impact.
Well, and you can feel that, like ultimately, that's where, great leaders like you that, look, you're having impact on people's lives, right? On community, on whole, and the echo effect of the work that you do has this ripple effect across the world, right? This sense of, look, if it happens here with us, with we, right now, that happens in their family life, that happens in their community life, that happens in their church life. It's an impact that is just, it's palpable. It's wonderful. And I think that's the gift of podcast. Look, being able to get the author of the book on the podcast, so you can hear from their own words. And by the way, guys, audience, we're going to have all the connections to the Amazon link to get the book. Pick it up. It's an easy read. It's not a long, hard one to read. Knock that one off like a nice snack. And the principles that are in it are really, really fundamental to running an amazing organization. Kyle, look, I think that's one of the spots where, like, if they wanted you to come to their organization to do a speaking engagement, or for something they're working on with a team, how do you do that?
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to share that. So I'm on essentially every social media platform. It's at Kyle McDowell Inc. My website is kylemcdowellinc.com. In either of those ways, you can reach me. And that's typically what happens is someone within an organization, not even necessarily the leader or a boss, says, we need this. This is something that would change how I approach my work every day. And somehow it makes it through the kind of the chain of the organization. I'll be asked to come in and speak, deliver a 60 or 90 minute keynote. And then there's lots of, we offer courses and things after that. But all of this starts, never mind my book, never mind the principles. It all starts with what you said, Anthony. And that's that self-reflection and being purposeful about the leadership legacy I want to create. Right. Those are two words a lot of people don't use together, but they belong together. You don't have to be Tom Brady to have a legacy. And everyone has the opportunity to have a legacy, particularly those that have a chance to influence and motivate and inspire others. That leadership legacy is a choice that you make.
Well, I think the gift in having a coach like you, look, I don't care if it's in a marriage, having a therapist, or if it's in having a coach in the business world, or if you're in some sort of sporting event, having a great coach brings out the best in an organization. It's the blind spots, the things that are built in, the stuff you can't even see that it's impacting your organization. Sometimes it's just it's a blind spot that a lot of us leaders get into.
We all have.
And I can tell you throughout my career, having great coaches like you come to an organization and help me and the team see things that we couldn't see from before, right? Because we're so close to the fire. And it happens on our construction jobs every day. Look, our superintendents are amazing human beings, right? They're amazing. They build, but they're there every day. They don't see the stuff that's happening. And then a project manager will come on and they see it. And it's like, of course, I mean, you walk by this, 47 times. Well, that happens in our business world all day, every day.
Sure.
And I think that's a neat one for, having a coach like yourself come in.
Yeah. There's value in that, right? Because also the other thing a coach will do in most cases is tell you the stuff you don't want to hear.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
That's the fear thing I mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah. That trust. I mean, you're essentially having something you trust come in and support you. And, that's that old ancient energy that we're all looking for, that stuff that was, bred into us, right? It was where we came from primitively, and we had people we could trust, and having that person come in as a coach or a support person, guide you. Look, Kyle, it's awesome. Folks, I'm going to make sure you have all of the contact stuff for Kyle and his training, and he's got all kinds of great social media links down below. You get on his social media right now. Go down to the links down below. I'll have all the social media. So if you're on X, or if you're on Twitter, or if you're on LinkedIn, or if you're on Facebook, he's got them all, and he's got some great social media. Quit scrolling the kitty cats chasing yarn balls, and get on Kyle's great social media stuff.
Anthony, I appreciate the opportunity, man. And I have to admit, I do probably 3 to 5 podcasts a month, and this is one I was really looking forward to. And it did not disappoint. So I appreciate the dialogue. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Audience, as always, thanks for being here. Hey, last week we had an amazing week. We blew the numbers. We had 6,000 downloads last week, and it was phenomenal the amount of people we had listening to the podcast. But I noticed that there's a bunch of you that still made it to the end of a podcast that weren't subscribers. If you could take a second and like and subscribe right now, it means the world to our team. We get amazing speakers just like Kyle on here, and look, it does make a big difference on the people that we get for the podcast. So if you could take a second and do that right now, just do that. That would be great. And hit the little bell so you can get, you get notifications. And as always, we're so grateful for you being here. Thank you.